Hello. This is a video about something, something. This is my journey with understanding surrender, why I had to come to this conclusion, and how it affects my work as a coach, just in general. First of all, thank you for all the support I got from yesterday's videos. People messaged me privately and stuff like that. Just so you know, that video yesterday that I made on self-harm is post-mortem, meaning it's like after death. So like my the realizations that I've had and that will still keep having are very much as a sense of, like, come from a sense of peace, inner peace, rather than of like being stuck in it. And I think that's really important, because when we step out of it, when we develop an expanded awareness towards something, whatever that problem or issue may be, the word is satori. I know Eckhart Tolle talks about that word meaning like it's a Sanskrit word or something. It's like the glasses were on top of our head the entire time. You know that feeling where you're like, where are my glasses? Where are my glasses? There they are. But that's the real positive effect of like surrender, of letting go and all this stuff, is that ultimately you do develop this expanded awareness where you realize all along that maybe it wasn't self-harm, maybe it was a need for control. And so when you realize that, you can start to see all the areas where you have control in your life, and then you start collecting positive experiences towards having control, and then suddenly there's no need for that fantasy anymore. So my journey with surrender was honestly around two major areas: around my social life and around money. My social life, I was always this is an interesting thing, because this is even sort of heavy for me to share, even though, to be honest, from a logical level, I know it's not that heavy. I was always Mr. Social. Let's just be honest. I was always Mr. Social, Mr. Talking to everyone, Mr. Everything. I made an identity out of it, and then one day I remember meeting someone, and you fucking know who you are if you're watching this, who was more social than me. Oh, shock horror, right? But due to life and accumulation and all of this stuff, basically, I started developing a lot of negative feelings towards being social, a lot of fears. I started developing all of these feelings that I was a horrible person, or that I was someone who was not worth knowing, or that I always get left behind. And if you know anything about reoccurring thoughts, is that often when you develop these thoughts, you then color your experiences with those thoughts. So someone might include you, but they might not include you as much. So then you start thinking you're being excluded. And so then those thoughts steamroll and steamroll and steamroll and steamroll and steamroll. Anyway, as willpower goes, I tend to be sometimes a high-achieving person. So as willpower goes, what I did is I just willpowered my way through it. I then ended up becoming Mr. Extraordinaire International Dating Coach, which was literally all about willpowering your way through hard relationship situations. So my solution was to come up with a solution for every problem, basically. So that way, if I was stuck or if I didn't know what to do, I would at least have a solution. I knew what to say, I knew what to do. I ended up teaching this, but I still wasn't happy. I knew the entire time that as I was coaching specifically men at this point, I was someone who, like, it just wasn't making me happy. I developed this identity that wasn't me. Now, it's interesting, because then I stopped working with men. I started working with women. I came back to Australia. I was so not feeling me that I ended up creating a whole new fucking persona called Mr. Harvey Hook. And if you watch my YouTube videos, you'll see some of my earlier and more popular videos is Mr. Harvey Hook. So I had this identity that was this false sense of self, because I was too afraid of being me. And it finally got to this point where I was like, man, if I write a book, what name do I put on the book? If I do all this stuff, what name do I put on it? I felt like I was two people living in one body, and I had dissociated my sense of self so much that it was a struggle to be me. Um, and then through life sometimes forces you to surrender. So I had to surrender to all my feelings. I felt fucking depressed for a while. But I ended up opening my heart to things. But the reason why I had to surrender, or I had to come to the idea of surrender, to understand what that truly meant, was that, and I'm not the only one talking about this shit. I'm not the only one talking about it. There's Dr. David Hawkins, there's like every Buddhist ever, Vipassana, like indirectly talks about that, like Eckhart Tolle, like all of the spiritual gurus who are not like necessarily cult leaders by choice, pretty much talk about this. But I knew the entire time that I was a dating coach. I swear to God, I knew this the entire time, even if I was aware of it or not, that I was better off before I had learnt all of this shit. That I was better off before all of this. That I had this insatiable, vivacious hunger just to know people and to get to know people. And through my quest to be this Mr. Extraordinary Dating Coach and to solve every problem, I had snuffed out my light, but my pilot light was still there. So I went on this surrender journey. When I end of 2018, I ran out of money. As quickly, if I have time for that story, I'll drop it at the end of this video. I ran out of money. I moved back with my parents. I cut my hair. I stopped being vegan. I stopped doing a lot of stuff that end of 2018. I think I said, yeah, a lot of stuff that was just this false sense of self that I did to make myself feel better, at least to make sure that I was moving in the right direction. I spent most of that year, 2019, living with my family, lying in bed, just hating the entire time, learning how to surrender, to get in, to allow my emotions to come up and to pass, and to develop that expanded awareness towards them. It was a long journey. I now see that if you want to speed up the process, you also have to surrender how you feel about things as well. Like, I'm going to let myself be stressed, right? You let yourself be stressed, but then you stop yourself from being stressed because you actually hate feeling stressed. So you got to surrender the hate towards feeling the stress, or the stress about being stressed. It's this whole thing. It's easy to learn, hard to master. It's basically a free healing method that anyone can do at any time, no matter fucking what. And that's why I think it's really cool. That's why I'm like pretty much spruiking this. And I think what my business model for coaching might shift to is doing it for, like teaching it for free online, but if you want my time, it costs money. Anyway, 2 stories about surrender. First of all, I remember before I started making money again in 2019, I realized that there was a part of me that was struggling with money, and that was before I fully knew what surrender was that I realized that I was not struggling. I hadn't struggled with money enough yet. Like it was like there's a limit I had to get to before I could finally start allowing myself to make money again. So I surrendered to that struggle, and within 2 weeks, I had a job, which is one of the jobs I have now. Oh, yeah. The second story was before I fully knew what surrender was, I had a client. I was working with women. We did a deep dive, like, regression exercise to where she was having some social issues around being social, basically. She had a lot of anxiety around it. We surrendered to that anxiety. Holy hell. She had, I think it was like 1 solid week of feeling fucking pain. It was like all this suppressed pain finally came up and just came up and came up and came up and came up. And I had to do extra calls just to make sure she was okay. By the end of that week, it was like she never had a fucking social issue in her life. That's the power of this shit. That's the power of surrender. It's the reset button. You have an expanded awareness, and then you realize what the hell you've been doing this entire time. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate everyone who does. I'm always surprised when people do, because that's my shit that I'm surrendering now, is I think no one watches my videos. So if you have commented, and if you haven't, comment also. But I'll talk to you soon, probably tomorrow.